There is no magic dirt in America. No zip code where the ground won't shake, the sky won't burn, or the grid won't simply give up and die. If you are looking for a fortress state that survives by default, you are chasing a ghost. Safety is not a geographic coordinate. It is a stack of planning, institutional depth, and community grit. We are running a simulation today. A total nationwide shock. Most states will fold within a week, but 9 are built to take the hit. Not because they are lucky, but because they are ready. Pay attention. Your life depends on the difference. The simulation begins at 4 p.m. on the Tuesday. It is not a bomb. It is a cascading failure of the eastern and western interconnects. The lights do not just flicker, they vanish. In Vermont, the silence is immediate. The wind off the Green Mountains suddenly carries more weight because the background hum of the world is gone. You are in your kitchen. Your daughter is doing homework. She looks up, her face pale in the dying light, and asks why her tablet stopped working. You realize the cellular towers went dark at the same second. This is not a local outage. This is the big one. Over in Hawaii, the isolation hits like a physical blow. The tourists on Waikiki are still laughing, thinking it is a hotel glitch. But the locals? They know. They look at the horizon and realize the nearest help is 2,000 miles of salt water away. Hawaii survives because it has to think about disruption every single day. The state emergency systems kick into a contingency loop that was born from being a target in the Pacific. While the mainland starts to scream, Hawaii's planners are already moving to protect the ports. They know logistics are the only thing keeping them alive. In Massachusetts and Maryland, the reaction is different. These are states with institutional depth. Within minutes, the command centers in Framingham and Reisterstown are humming on diesel generators. They do not wait for federal orders. Maryland's proximity to the seat of power means their SOP is built for continuity of government. They are already triaging the grid. But for the average citizen, the panic is starting. You see the first line forming at the gas station. People are shouting. This is where the planning of a state meets the reality of human fear. The simulation is just getting warmed up. New Hampshire and Vermont have an edge here: scale. In a massive state, a blackout is a logistical nightmare of millions. In the Granite State, it is a community problem. You step out onto your porch. The air smells like wood smoke and cold pine. Your neighbor is already out there, looking at his generator. There is no rioting. There is a weird, quiet understanding. The rural character of these states acts as a natural buffer against the initial urban shockwave. But do not be fooled. Low density does not mean total safety. Hope is not a strategy. Most people guess they have enough food and water, but the math says otherwise when the days turn into weeks. In this simulation, the ones who die first are the ones who assumed the cavalry was coming. Go to protocolsurvival.com right now, calculate your survival score using our diagnostic tools, and enroll in our free Catastrophe Survival 101 course. Do not wait for the signal to drop. Get the training and the systems you need to manage your family's inventory before the stores are stripped bare. You need to be your own command center. Secure your future while you still have a connection. Colorado deals with wildfires and blizzards every year. Resilience there is not theoretical, it is a habit. As the sun sets on the first day of our simulation, the state's multi-hazard adaptation plans are already being stress-tested. The mountain passes are being monitored. In Denver, the authorities are looking at the water supply. If the pumps fail, the city dies. But Colorado ranks high because they've spent years planning around exactly this. The public health readiness is top tier. They have the medical infrastructure to handle the first wave of trauma. But the clock is ticking for everyone. Washington State is living under the shadow of the big one anyway. Their planning for earthquakes makes them robust for almost any other disaster. In the first 4 hours of our simulation, the Emergency Management Division is already coordinating with local hubs. They have high-capacity response systems because they have to. If you are in Seattle, you are looking at the dark skyline and realizing that the infrastructure was built for this. It is a high-hazard state with high-capability response. That combination is what keeps you alive when the world goes sideways. Utah has something the other states do not: a culture of preparedness. In the first 4 hours, while people in New York are fighting over the last bottle of water, families in Provo are quietly inventorying their year's supply of wheat and honey. It is culturally normalized there. The state ranks well because the baseline readiness starts at the front door of every house. The simulation shows that Utah's household resilience keeps the emergency services from being overwhelmed. They can focus on the big infrastructure because the citizens aren't calling 911 because they forgot to buy batteries. Connecticut is small, dense, and has massive institutional capacity. In a disaster, coordination often beats raw land area. By the 4th hour, the state's compact geography allows for rapid communication between municipalities. They are a high-capacity model. You see state troopers setting up checkpoints not to trap people, but to manage the flow of resources. When you live in a state that takes climate preparedness seriously in its official documents, you see those plans manifest as boots on the ground. It is the stack in action. Planning is the difference between a riot and an evacuation. The first night is the hardest. In Vermont and New Hampshire, the temperature drops fast. Without the furnace hum, the house starts to bleed heat. This is where the protection motivation kicks in. You look at your youngest sleeping under 3 blankets. You can see her breath. This is not about you anymore. It is about keeping that little body warm. States like Vermont survive because their people are accustomed to cold weather planning. They have wood stoves and backup systems as standard kit. If you are in a southern state without this culture, this first night is where the casualties start. By hour 4, the denial is dead. The simulation shows a clear divide. In the 9 resilient states, the official response is visible. Radios are broadcasting on emergency bands. In the states that ignored the data, there is only static. People are starting to realize that the vibe of their state doesn't matter. Only the planning does. You sit in the dark, checking your EDC. You realize that the resilience of your state is just a multiplier for your own preparedness. If you have nothing, the state can only do so much. The grind is about to begin. Sunlight hits the first day of the lockdown. The grocery stores are already empty. In Massachusetts, the state has already moved to secure medical supply chains. They have the healthcare IT and the system readiness to know where the oxygen and insulin are. But for you, the problem is calories. You open your pantry. This is the math of survival. Every meal you eat is a meal you won't have next week. In the simulation, the 9 states maintain basic order because their institutions can still communicate. But the household stress is rising like a flood. Silence is the loudest sound. By day 3, the sanitation issues start. If the pumps are down, the toilets don't flush. This is the part no one likes to talk about. In Maryland and Connecticut, the high-capacity infrastructure means some gravity-fed systems might still work, but most urban centres are in trouble. You need to manage waste, or your home becomes a biohazard. You are not just protecting your family from the cold, you are protecting them from dysentery. You see your son's face when you tell him he can't use the bathroom. That look of confusion and fear is why you study the SOP now, before it is real. Hawaii is hit the hardest by day 5. The just-in-time delivery system is dead. The island's supply chain fragility is a monster. But the state survives because it has contingency plans for isolation. They move to community-scale distribution. They use the military presence as a force multiplier. But even with the best planning, the lack of outside resources is a ticking clock. If you are there, You are relying on the state's ability to maintain the stack. Resilience there is a battle against the calendar. You learn very quickly what is a luxury and what is a necessity. In Colorado, the dry climate becomes the primary enemy. Without the grid, water rights and distribution become the only thing that matters. The state's planning includes drought and water scarcity scenarios, which gives them a roadmap. But on the ground, your tap is dry. You are hauling water from a nearby creek and boiling it over a camp stove. Your hands are cracked and bleeding from the dry air and the work. You do it because your wife needs to cook the last of the rice. You are a pack mule now. This is the reality of a resilient state. It is still hard. By the end of the first week, the silence is heavy. No planes overhead, no highway hum. Washington and Utah are seeing the best community cohesion. In Utah, the neighborhood ties are holding. People are sharing resources because it is part of their social fabric. In Washington, the infrastructure planning has kept some local microgrids or emergency comms alive. You hear a voice on a hand-crank radio. It is a local official, calm and steady. That voice is a lifeline. It tells you that the state hasn't vanished. Not yet. Maryland's resilience is tied to systems. By day 10, the federal proximity starts to pay off, or become a burden. The simulation shows that Maryland's emergency infrastructure is robust enough to maintain a perimeter around critical assets. If you are in the suburbs, you see more patrols than in other states. The coordination is high. But you are still eating cold beans out of a can. Your children are asking when the lights will come back on. You have to lie to them. You tell them soon, because hope is a fuel, and you are running low on everything else. The system is holding, but the cracks are showing. New Hampshire is the low drama state. By day 12, the lack of performative centralization is an asset. Local towns are managing themselves. They are using old-school methods, paper maps, physical bulletin boards, town hall meetings. The state's climate planning documents aren't just paper. They are a culture of practical adaptation. You see people bartering wood for canned goods. It's not a collapse, it's a regression to a simpler, tougher time. The states that survive are the ones that can live without the vibe of the modern world. Vermont ranks first in many lists for a reason. By day 14, the community-scale coordination is the gold standard. The state's planning culture is decentralized. If the main bridge is out, the local crew already has a bypass planned. They don't wait for a FEMA truck that might never come. If you live there, you are part of a network. But that network is only as strong as your contribution. If you were the guy who showed up with nothing but a suitcase, you are a burden. The simulation shows that Vermont survives because its people are an extension of the state's preparedness. Day 14 is where the math gets ugly. In the states not on our list, the mortality rate from lack of medication and cold exposure is spiking. Massachusetts and Connecticut are holding steady because their health infrastructure is top tier. They have the IT to manage patient loads, even on backup power. But even there, you see the stretch. You walk past the local clinic and see a line of people with grey skin and sunken eyes. You hold your daughter's hand tighter. You realise that resilience just means the hospital is open, not that it is easy. Survival is a grinding, ugly business. You have to be harder than the problem. You might think the National Guard would have fixed this by now. In a total grid-down simulation, the Guard is just people. They have families too. Their trucks need fuel that isn't being pumped. The reason these 9 states outperform the others isn't because they have more soldiers. It is because their systems don't require a miracle to function. They are built for low-fidelity survival. They plan for the Guard to be late. They plan for the federal government to be silent. That is the real prepper lesson. If your plan requires the cavalry, you don't have a plan. You have a wish. Your stomach is a constant gnawing ache. You have lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks. This is the grind. In the simulation, we see states like Utah and Colorado performing better here because of the household storage culture. But even with a year of wheat, you are tired. The physical labour of surviving, hauling water, chopping wood, standing watch, is burning 4,000 calories a day. You are eating 1,500. Your temper is short. Your wife is crying over a broken jar of peaches. This is the stage where most people break. Not from a bang, but from the slow, steady drain of their energy. In Washington and Colorado, a new threat emerges: wildfire. Without active forest management and rapid response, a single spark from a desperate campfire can level a county. The states that survive are the ones that maintained their warning and evacuation capability. You see the horizon turn orange. The air is thick with the smell of burning cedar. You have to decide: stay and defend, or leave and lose everything. Washington's planning for high-risk environments means they have clear evacuation routes mapped out. They have thought about this. Have you? Or is your plan to just drive away until you run out of gas? Massachusetts and Maryland are facing the water. A coastal storm hits on day 15. In a normal world, it's just a nor'easter. In our simulation, it's a catastrophe. The pumps can't keep up. Basement shelters are flooding. The state's response systems are the only thing standing between the population and the tide. Maryland's institutional depth allows them to prioritize the seawalls and the dikes. But if you are in a low-lying area, you are swimming. Resilience isn't immunity. It's the ability to absorb the hit and keep standing. You are cold, wet, and tired, but you are still here. When the grid goes dark, the cloud goes with it. All those survival videos you bookmarked on YouTube? Gone. All your digital manuals? Unreachable. You need a command center that works offline, in the palm of your hand. I built the Protocol Survival app to be that system. It allows you to secure your inventory, map your local resources, and access your training modules without a signal. Go to protocolsurvival.com and get the system now. Enroll in the free Catastrophe Survival 101 course and download the offline assets while you still have a high-speed connection. When the towers fall, your phone should be a tool, not a paperweight. Secure your offline backup today. In our 9 states, the communication isn't just about radio. It's about the healthcare IT and system readiness the data talks about. By day 18, these states are using hardened networks to coordinate food drops. They are the only ones with a clear picture of the disaster. If you are in Connecticut, you might see a drone delivering medical supplies to a local hub. It feels like science fiction in a world that has reverted to the 1800s. That is what high capacity looks like. It's the ability to maintain 21st century tools when the 20th century grid fails. It's a massive survival multiplier. The grind has a mental cost. By day 20, the simulation shows a spike in domestic stress. In states with high community resilience like Vermont and New Hampshire, the neighbour-to-neighbour support acts as a pressure valve. You are not alone in the dark. You are part of a town that is surviving together. That matters more than a bunker full of gold. If you can't trust the person across the street, you are a prisoner in your own home. The best states are the ones where people still look each other in the eye. 3 weeks in, the first panic is a memory. The grind is your life. Now comes the emergence. You have to leave the house. You need to scout for long-term resources. In Washington and Utah, the simulation shows the emergence of organized local markets. Not the chaos of the first week, but a structured barter system. You step out with your pack. You are looking for salt, fuel, and information. The states that survive have maintained enough order that you aren't immediately shot for walking down the road. But you are still alert. Every rustle in the bushes is a potential threat. You are a hunter-gatherer in a tactical vest. You meet a patrol in Maryland. They aren't the National Guard, they are a local resilience committee. They have orange armbands and radio headsets. This is the institutional depth of Maryland manifesting at the street level. They ask for your ID and your purpose. It's tense. You realize that the state has devolved, but it hasn't disappeared. They tell you where the clean zone is. They give you a gallon of water. This interaction is the difference between life and death. In a non-resilient state, that patrol would have been a gang. Here, it is the remnants of a system. On day 25, the first supply ship reaches Hawaii. It isn't a federal carrier, it's a private vessel from a coalition of Pacific partners. The state's isolation-driven planning had these protocols ready for decades. The port is clear, the distribution is ready. If you are on the Big Island, you see the trucks moving. It's not a return to normal, but it's a pulse. It proves that isolation can be managed if you have the grit to plan for it. You celebrate with a single can of pineapple. It is the best thing you have ever tasted. The island held. The first major snow hits Colorado on day 28. In the simulation, this is the final test. The state's planning for snow events is legendary, but without the plows, the mountain communities are cut off. You are snowed in. But you have your wood stove and your stored grain. You watch the white flakes fall and you realize that you aren't afraid. The state's stack of planning gave you the headspace to prepare your own home. You are warm, your family is safe. The disaster is outside, but the survival is inside. You have adapted to the mountain's rules. In Utah, you see something different. A neighborhood dinner. Not a party, but a communal potluck of stored food. The household preparedness culture has morphed into community survival. You see families sharing the math of their storage. I have extra wheat if you have extra fuel. It is a logic-based survival system. The state doesn't have to intervene because the people are the intervention. This is why Utah keeps showing up at the top of the lists. It's not the government, it's the culture. If you don't have this, you better have a lot of ammo, because you'll be alone. 1 month. The simulation moves from emergency to existence. This is the long haul. Most states are now dark zones of chaotic migration, but the 9 are starting to stabilize. Massachusetts and Connecticut are restoring limited power to critical hubs. They are using the infrastructure redundancy that the FEMA data mentions. You see a streetlight flicker on in the distance. It's a miracle. It's a sign that the stack is working from the bottom up. But life is forever changed. You don't think about when things get back to normal. You think about tomorrow. In the long haul, money is paper for the fire. In Vermont and New Hampshire, the economy is now based on skills and resources. You are a carpenter. You trade your labor for a sack of potatoes and a gallon of kerosene. The states that survive have the social cohesion to prevent this barter from turning into robbery. The rule of law is maintained by common consent, not just by the police. You walk the streets of your town. People are working. There is a sense of purpose. It is a hard, lean purpose, but it is life. The simulation shows that resilience is a social contract. By day 60, the lack of chronic care starts to take the elders. This is the part no state can fully plan for. Even in Maryland, with its top-tier medical IT, the supply of specialized meds is gone. You watch your father grow weaker. This is the protection motivation at its most painful. You would give anything for a single pill. This is why you must prepare for the long haul now. You need to know herbal alternatives and basic first aid. The state can't save everyone. It can only maintain the framework. The rest is on you. You have to be the medic. Washington State uses its tech sector depth to create localized mesh networks. By day 90, Seattle is a series of islands of connectivity. They are sharing data on crop yields and weather patterns. The high-capacity response has evolved into a high-capacity recovery. You are using a local app to track the community garden's output. It's not the internet you remember, but it's a digital ecosystem that works. This is the Washington model. High hazard, but high capability. They don't just survive the earthquake, they build a better city on the ruins. They are the future of the simulation. The simulation ends on day 100. You are still alive. Your family is thin but healthy. You look at the map of the United States. Most of it is a question mark. But these 9 states are dots of light in the dark. Not because they were safe, but because they were resilient. They invested in the stack. They planned for the worst and hoped for the best. You realize that the state you chose was only half the battle. Your own hands did the rest. The lesson of the 9 isn't to move to Vermont. The lesson is to build Vermont wherever you are. Look at your local planning. Look at your institutional depth. If it's weak, your household readiness has to be twice as strong. Resilience is not a vibe. It's not a gear list. It's a culture of continuity. You need to be the person who brings the stack to your neighborhood. Start now. Don't wait for the grid to tell you it's over. By then, the math will be finished and your score will be final. We spend so much time worrying about the apocalypse that we forget what the day after looks like. The grid isn't just what keeps the lights on. It's what keeps the monsters out. When it fails, you find out who your neighbours really are. You find out who you really are. The 9 states on our list aren't lucky. They are intentional. They decided that the end of the world shouldn't be the end of their story. What have you decided? Are you a character in the simulation, or the one writing the code for your own survival? The choice isn't on a map. It's in your hands right now.